It was a tragedy. If you've seen the thumbnail, you know what I'm talking about. Tommy Lasorda standing there speaking, while we see the images of Gary Carter's funeral service. Two different worlds. One showing a legend who managed him, the other showing the goodbye nobody wanted to see. But here's what makes this story so heavy, so real, so worth your attention right now. When baseball's greatest names gathered to say goodbye to Gary Carter in 2012, they didn't reveal some scandal hidden in his past. They didn't come out with stories that shattered his image. Instead, they revealed something far more stunning. His joy was real. His smile wasn't a mask. His optimism, his love for the game, his devotion to his family and faith, all of it was genuinely him, even as his body screamed in pain, even as cancer attacked his brain, even as the world closed in. The painful truth wasn't that we'd been fooled by a performance. The painful truth was that we finally understood just how rare it is to meet someone whose outside perfectly matches their inside, someone who refused to become cynical in a cynical game, someone who chose to build other people up instead of tearing them down. In the days and weeks after Carter died, legends who played with him, against him, and for him started talking. Keith Hernandez, Andre Dawson, Dwight Gooden, Darryl Strawberry, Johnny Bench, Tom Seaver, Ron Darling, Tom Verducci, Tommy Lasorda. Each one had a story. Each one had experienced something in Gary's presence that changed how they saw themselves. If you want to understand why those stories matter, why they're still worth hearing more than a decade later, stay with me. This is the real legacy of the kid. Now, if you're watching this because you care about Gary Carter, about integrity in sports, about what it actually means to live the right way, please use the hype feature on this video and give it some hype. It helps us keep bringing you stories about athletes who shaped baseball and changed people. Your support matters. The thing about catching in Major League Baseball is that it destroys you, not metaphorically, literally. A catcher crouches thousands of times per season. Thousands. His knees absorb impact after impact after impact. His legs take the full weight of his body over and over again. His hands swell. His back aches. His shoulders burn. Most catchers play 5, maybe 10 years before the position uses them up and spits them out. Gary Carter played 18 seasons. He caught 2,056 games. That number is a National League record. It's not just a number on a page. It represents 18 years of choosing to show up. 18 years of packing his knees with ice after games. 18 years of surgeries, 9 of them total, all on his knees. Keith Hernandez played alongside Carter on the 1986 Mets. Hernandez was a thinking man's ball player, precise, observant. He watched people. He understood what made them tick. Hernandez would later say that the painful truth of Gary's career was something most fans never saw. Carter refused to let his physical breakdown reduce his spirit or his availability to the team. That's the key phrase, he refused. It wasn't that he didn't feel the pain. It wasn't that he was numb to it. He felt it all. Every surgery, every ache, every moment when his body told him to stop. But he refused to let it change how he showed up. The man who caught him would throw a baseball 80, 90 miles per hour right at his chest, over and over. And Gary would be there, ready, present, alert. Tom Verducci, one of baseball's most respected writers, described Carter's physical decline as a slow surrender. That's the perfect phrase. His body was surrendering to time and wear. His muscles were weakening. His mobility behind the plate was diminishing. But his facial expression never changed. The joy never left his face. Most people would see that contradiction and assume it was fake. The pain is real, so the smile must be an act, right? But Verducci realized something else. The smile wasn't compensating for the pain. They existed together. The pain was real. The joy was also real. They weren't opposites. They were simultaneous truths about one man's life. When Carter played catcher, he did it with a purpose that went beyond stats. From 1977 to 1984, he threw out runners at a rate of 40%. The league average in that same era was 32%. 4 bases, 8 percentage points. That's the difference between an ordinary catcher and someone who genuinely understood his job as a guardian, a protector. He wasn't just receiving pitches, he was running an entire operation from behind the plate. He was managing a pitching staff. He was studying base runners. He was making split-second decisions. He was communicating without words. And he did it all with broken knees and a smile. Every game, every inning, every at-bat. He brought the same intensity and purpose, the same devotion to doing the job correctly. This was the foundation of his catching style. This was what made him different from other catchers who might have had better batting averages or more home runs. but didn't have his commitment to the small details. The things that don't show up in box scores. The things that other players notice when they're sharing a dugout with him. Before he became the moral center of the 1986 New York Mets, Gary Carter was the foundation of Montreal baseball. Andre Dawson played alongside him during those Expos years. Dawson would later describe Carter in a way that captures something essential. Carter didn't just play for the Montreal Expos, he was the Montreal Expos. That's not hyperbole, that's one professional athlete telling you about another. Dawson understood what it meant to be the face of a franchise. He was the face of his own team, but he could see that Carter carried something different. Carter carried the weight of legitimizing Major League Baseball in a Canadian market. He was the first true homegrown superstar the Expos had ever developed. The organization rose because he set the tempo. His work ethic became the standard. His professionalism became the expectation. Young Expos pitchers watched him work and understood what excellence looked like. Dawson called this role protective. Carter was a protective older brother to younger players. He created a sense of security just by being there. In 1981, the Montreal Expos finally reached the postseason. It was the only postseason appearance in franchise history. In the National League Division Series against Philadelphia, Carter hit .421 with 2 home runs. In the championship series against Los Angeles, he hit .438. Over the entire postseason run, he accumulated 15 hits. These weren't statistics that belonged in some random season. These were performances that came when everything was on the line. When the stakes were highest, Gary Carter elevated. He showed his teammates what was possible when you stopped protecting yourself and started fighting for something bigger than yourself. Dawson reflected on the tragedy of losing Carter at the age of 57. That's what struck him. Not just that Carter was gone, but that he was taken when he still had so much to give. When the Montreal community was still feeling the effects of having known him. When his legacy in Canada was still being written. The Expos moved to Washington in 1994. The franchise is gone, but the memory of Gary Carter is what keeps that era alive in Montreal. He is what made those years matter. Number 9, Tom Seaver, the Hall of Famer pitcher who played with Carter on the Mets. Seaver was a thinker, a philosopher of baseball. He understood the game at a level that went beyond what happened on the scoreboard. Seaver knew something about Carter that the cynics couldn't see. He noticed that Carter wore his heart on his sleeve every single inning. That's the phrase Seaver used. Every inning. Not just the big moments. Not just when the cameras were rolling. Every inning. Seaver argued that the real truth behind Carter's success was his refusal to become cynical in a cynical game. Baseball is full of people who have been disappointed, who have been hurt by the business side of the sport, who have decided that it's better to protect yourself by becoming hard and cold. Seaver watched Carter refuse to do that. Carter could have become cynical. He had reasons to. He could have decided that the game owed him nothing and that he should protect his body and his energy. Instead, he chose joy. He chose to remain open. He chose to believe that playing baseball was a privilege. This wasn't naivete. This was a choice. A deliberate decision to see the world a certain way. Number 8, Tom Verducci, the writer who spent years observing Carter. Verducci and others had a problem to solve after Carter died. For years, there had been a nickname floating around, Camera Carter. It was a pejorative. It was meant as an insult. The implication was clear. Gary only acted this way when the cameras were on. He was performing for the media. His enthusiasm was calculated. His joy was a product. But Verducci did something after Carter's death. He dismantled that myth. He explained that the joy was entirely authentic, even when the cameras weren't rolling, even as Carter's body was beginning its slow surrender, even during the surgeries and the pain and the nights when he couldn't move without wincing. The joy was real, and the painful truth was that the skeptics had been wrong. Carter didn't play with joy because he was oblivious to the hardships of the game. He wasn't naive about cynicism. He saw it all around him. He just decided not to become it. He felt lucky to be a part of baseball, and that wasn't fake. It was the most authentic thing about him. Number 7, Ron Darling, the pitcher who played alongside Carter on the 1986 Mets. Darling had a specific word for what Carter meant to that team. He called him the ballast. In a ship, the ballast is the weight that keeps you stable, that keeps you from tipping over. The 1986 Mets were chaos. They were high energy and high chaos. They were a collection of dominant personalities. Many of them were living the lifestyle of young athletes in New York City. Late nights, aggression, a kind of recklessness that comes from believing you're invincible. Within that environment, Gary Carter was the outlier. He was the straight arrow. He remained devoted to his family. He remained devoted to his faith. His lifestyle stood in contrast to the culture around him. At first, some of the younger players viewed this as friction. They might have even mocked it. But Darling realized something that most people only understand in retrospect. They didn't just lose a legendary catcher when Gary died. They lost the moral anchor that kept their chaotic clubhouse grounded. Carter provided something that couldn't be measured in stolen bases or passed balls. He provided a reminder that there was another way to live, that you could be excellent at your job and also excellent as a person, that you could achieve at the highest levels without sacrificing your integrity. Darling described Carter as a gamer, someone whose reliability was as good as they got, someone who never allowed personal frustration to affect his commitment to his teammates. This dual leadership structure on that Mets team was crucial. Keith Hernandez provided the intellectual and tactical leadership on the infield. He was the strategist, the thinker, the man who understood the game's chess moves. Carter provided emotional and moral continuity from behind the plate. Together, they allowed the team to navigate the intense pressure of the New York media market. Together, they allowed younger stars to grow without self-destructing under the weight of New York's expectations. Number 6, Dawson again. Andre Dawson. He appears multiple times in this story because his connection to Carter spanned multiple eras of Carter's life, from Montreal to the memories that lingered after. Dawson reflected that everyone who hears Gary Carter's name is compelled to smile. Think about that for a moment. Everyone. It's a universal response. The name itself triggers something. A memory of his smile, a memory of his presence, a memory of how he made you feel when you were around him. Bench noted that he was going to miss every part of Gary Carter because of the infectious nature of his personality. This wasn't just about missing a teammate, it was about missing a specific energy that Carter brought to a room, to a dugout, to a clubhouse. Infectiousness. That's the word. Contagious. His joy spread to other people. His optimism influenced how they saw themselves and their own lives. Number 5, Johnny Bench, the greatest catcher in the history of baseball. That's not contested. Bench was Carter's idol when Carter came to the big leagues. Carter modeled himself after Bench from day one. When Bench spoke at Carter's memorial service, he said something that has become legendary. For those who knew him, no words are necessary. For those who didn't, no words are adequate. What does that mean? It means that if you spent time around Gary Carter, you understand who he was without needing anyone to explain it. But if you didn't know him, no amount of words will ever fully capture what you missed. Carter's durability allowed him to catch more games in the National League than even Bench himself. Bench is considered the position's greatest player. Carter caught more games than Bench. Think about the physical toll that represents. Think about the commitment it took. Carter accumulated 11 All-Star selections and 3 Gold Gloves. These are the kinds of achievements that secure a Hall of Fame case. But Bench and others emphasize that the painful truth about Gary's legacy wasn't his statistics. It was who he was off the field. A Hall of Famer not just in the record books, a Hall of Famer in how he treated people and how he lived his life, the example he set. Number 4, Dwight Gooden, Doc, the phenom pitcher who threw himself at the Mets in the 1980s. Gooden struggled with demons that Carter never had to battle, but Carter became something for Gooden that was more important than a teammate. He became a protective figure, a guide, a standard bearer for what it meant to be a man of principle. In baseball terminology, a pitcher and catcher are called battery mates. They work together. They communicate constantly. They develop a rhythm and a trust. The pitcher trusts the catcher to understand what he needs. The catcher trusts the pitcher to execute. It's one of the most intimate relationships in sports. But for Gooden, Carter was more than that. He was a protector. Even during Gooden's most difficult personal struggles, Carter's primary concern was Gooden's health and well-being. Not his statistics, not his wins, not his importance to the team's success. His health, his well-being as a human being. That's what mattered most to Carter. The painful truth for Gooden was watching his invincible mentor succumb to brain cancer. This man who seemed like he could overcome anything. This man who had shown Gooden how to live a certain way. Suddenly he was vulnerable. Suddenly he was fighting a battle he couldn't win. But Gooden said something that matters deeply. He said Carter's courageous battle with glioblastoma provided him with strength and faith to face his own personal struggles. Carter's role as a mentor didn't end when he retired. It continued through the grace with which he handled his final illness. Gooden watched how Carter faced death, and that watching changed him. That observation, that witness to Carter's final moments, gave Gooden permission to face his own difficulties with the same grace. Number 3, Darryl Strawberry, the troubled superstar who played alongside Carter in the 1986 Mets clubhouse. Strawberry was magnificent as a player, powerful, aggressive, but he struggled with addiction and legal issues that haunted his life. He was the opposite of Carter in almost every way, and he knew it. His teammates mocked Carter for being uncool, for being square, for not participating in the late-night excursions that defined the younger player's lifestyle. Strawberry participated in all of it. He lived the opposite life, but then something happened as Strawberry aged. as he faced the consequences of his own choices. As he watched his life play out and understood what he had done to himself, he realized something. He wished he could have lived his life like Gary Carter. That's not a small statement. That's a man looking back and saying, I got it wrong. He had the real goods. He had what actually mattered, and I didn't see it because I was too busy chasing something else. Strawberry was mocked for his wholesomeness, but that wholesomeness wasn't an act of superiority. It was a model of how to handle the pressures of fame, how to raise children, how to maintain your integrity when everyone around you is telling you that integrity doesn't matter. Strawberry's pivot from mockery to profound respect is testimony to the enduring power of Carter's example. Here was a man who lived differently, and when life caught up with him, when age and consequence became real, Strawberry understood that Carter had been right all along. Number 2, Keith Hernandez, the captain of the 1986 Mets, the thinking man's ball player, the co-captain who understood every dimension of the game. Hernandez is the one who pointed out the painful truth that defined Carter's career. He refused to let his physical disintegration diminish his spirit or his availability. This wasn't just about showing up to play. This was about something deeper. By maintaining his vigor in the face of pain that would have incapacitated most athletes, Carter eliminated the right of his teammates to complain about minor ailments. If Gary could play through 9 knee surgeries, then everyone else needed to elevate their own threshold for toughness. This is what leadership looks like when it's not about speeches or slogans. It's about example. It's about showing people what's possible. It's about making your own suffering invisible so that other people's minor struggles seem manageable by comparison. Hernandez was a meticulous observer of teammate performance. He noticed things. And what he noticed about Carter was that the pain was real and the spirit was also real, and they never got confused. Carter didn't deny the pain by calling it weakness. He just decided it wouldn't define him. Number 1, Tommy Lasorda, the legendary manager who directed Carter with the Dodgers. Lasorda had a specific way of describing Gary's legacy. He called him a Hall of Famer on and off the field. That's the summation. On the field, the statistics were obvious. The records, the All-Star appearances, the World Series ring, the moments when he elevated when the stakes were highest. But off the field was where the real Hall of Famer lived. Lasorda noted that Carter's character never wavered, never. He was the same person in the dugout as he was on the golf course, as he was in the hospital room. This consistency is rare. Most people have a public self and a private self. Most people perform in certain contexts and relax in others. Carter didn't. He was genuine everywhere. His faith was genuine. His family devotion was genuine. His optimism was genuine. All of it. Lasorda managed some of the greatest players in baseball history, but he emphasized that what made Carter special was that he brought his complete self to everything he did. The diagnosis came in May of 2011, glioblastoma multiforme, the most aggressive form of primary brain cancer. It starts in the glial cells and spreads rapidly through brain tissue. It's relentless. It's devastating. It's a disease that doesn't care about your willpower or your optimism or your faith. The statistics are brutal. Only 34% of people survive 5 years after diagnosis. When doctors told Carter those odds, they were essentially telling him he had a year or less. Maybe 2 if he was fortunate. Maybe if he responded well to treatment. Gary had less than a year. On January 19th, 2012, just 8 months after diagnosis, an MRI revealed new tumors on his brain, new lesions. The disease was advancing faster than anyone had hoped. The cancer wasn't giving him time. It wasn't respecting his will. Then in January, he fell. The fall resulted in a complete tear of his rotator cuff. His body was breaking down in multiple ways simultaneously. The brain tumor, the rotator cuff tear, the declining neurological function, everything happening at once. But Jay Horwitz, the Mets public relations director, visited Carter a month before his death. And when he arrived, Gary greeted him with words that sounded like something Gary would say about the 9th inning of a tie game. I am going to beat this thing. That statement says everything about who Carter was. Not that he was in denial, not that he was naive about his condition, but that he approached every challenge the same way, with determination, with a refusal to surrender, with the belief that if you fought hard enough, believed hard enough, maybe you could overcome the odds, even impossible odds, even when everyone around him understood the biology of the situation, even when the science said no, his spirit said yes. He passed away on February 16, 2012, age 57. Gary Carter's life was rooted in faith and in his role as a father. This wasn't something Carter did as an obligation. It was central to who he was. While his teammates were often defined by their late-night habits, Carter's straight lifestyle provided the stability that allowed him to maintain his performance over 18 seasons. His commitment to family came before before everything else, before statistics, before accolades, before the pursuit of personal records. It was the foundation that held him up, but his commitment extended beyond his own family. Through the Gary Carter Foundation, he actively raised funds and awareness for causes that mattered to him. The Autism Project of Palm Beach County worked to improve the physical, mental, and spiritual well-being of children. Juvenile diabetes awareness and research funding. Leukemia awareness in memory of his own mother. Carter's mother had struggled with leukemia. That disease was part of his family history. His foundation work honors her memory while helping other families facing the same battle. Philanthropy wasn't something Carter did as an afterthought. It wasn't something he did to build his image or gain recognition. It was central to who he was, just like his faith, just like his family. It was woven into the fabric of his existence. Strawberry specifically highlighted Carter's role as a father as a key component of having the real goods. The real goods being excellent as a person, being excellent as a father, being excellent as a human being. That was the real achievement. Carter often attributed his professional work ethic to his childhood experience as a paperboy. He once said he wanted to be the best paperboy ever. Not just adequate, not just acceptable, the best. He would stop his bike to make sure each paper was delivered correctly to each porch. That attention to detail, that refusal to take shortcuts, that became the hallmark of his entire catching career. Every inning was an opportunity to do things the right way. The paperboy ethos translated into a meticulous approach to baseball, to life, to everything. This sense of responsibility is what Darling recognized as the moral anchor of the 1986 clubhouse. Carter's work didn't begin and end with baseball. It began and ended with a commitment to doing things correctly, to honoring the responsibilities you had been given, to understanding that every job, no matter how small, deserved your best effort. The breakthrough season came in 1977. Carter was under the management of Dick Williams in Montreal. He caught every day. He hit 31 home runs. This season solidified his status as the premier catcher of the National League, a title he would hold for nearly a decade. Starting in 1979, he was selected to 10 straight All-Star games. He won the Midsummer Classic's MVP award twice. In 1981, he hit 2 home runs to lead the National League to victory. In 1984, he hit the game-winning home run in a 2-1 win. These weren't just exhibitions for Carter. They were opportunities to compete alongside legends, to measure himself against the best, to prove that he belonged in the conversation with the very greatest players in the game. The 1986 World Series was the ultimate moment. The Mets trailed 3-2 against the Boston Red Sox. Game 6 was a must-win. The Mets were down to their final strike, and Gary Carter stepped up. He got a hit. He didn't let the moment define him by freezing. He acted. His hit sparked a rally that saved the Mets' season. That moment is what people remember. The clutch hit. The moment when everything could have ended, and instead he made it continue. But that moment was possible only because of everything that came before. 18 years of showing up. 18 years of choosing the right way even when the wrong way was easier. 18 years of putting his body on the line. By the time the 1986 World Series came around, Carter was already a legend. He had already proven himself. He had already set the standard. The World Series was just the public confirmation of what everyone already knew. The painful truth that legends revealed after Gary Carter's death wasn't that he had been faking it all along. It was that his authenticity was so rare that it shocked people when they finally understood its depth. He didn't just smile, he genuinely felt lucky to be a part of baseball. He didn't just play hard, he genuinely believed in doing things the right way. He didn't just show up, he genuinely cared about the people around him and how his example might influence them. The cynics had called him Camera Carter, but the truth was that he was the same person in every room, in every situation, in every context. Camera or no camera, that consistency, that integrity, that refusal to be different depending on who was watching, that's what made him a Hall of Famer off the field. That's what made Strawberry wish he could have lived like Carter lived. That's what gave Gooden strength when he needed it most. That's what Hernandez observed as the true strength of Carter's career. That's what Dawson meant when he said Carter was the Montreal Expos. That's what Darling meant when he said he was the ballast of a championship team. That's what Seaver meant when he said Carter wore his heart on his sleeve every inning. That's what Verducci meant when he dismantled the myth of Camera Carter. That's what Bench meant when he said no words are adequate for those who didn't know him. That's what Lasorda meant when he called him a Hall of Famer on and off the field. Gary Carter proved something with his life that deserves to be remembered. He proved that integrity and optimism can survive even the most cynical environments. He proved that they can survive even the most savage illnesses. He proved that you can be excellent and authentic at the same time. He proved that you can choose joy even when pain is present. He proved that you can lead through example. He proved that the way you treat people matters more than the statistics you accumulate. He proved that faith and family can be at the center of a remarkable career. He proved that a paperboy's ethos, doing everything the right way, being the best version of yourself in every role, can guide a life from childhood through 18 seasons of professional baseball and into the foundation work and philanthropy and fatherhood that defined his later years. When legends talk about Carter, they always come back to the same point: the authenticity, the refusal to change who he was based on circumstances or context. Hernandez could see it every day. The pain was real. The smile was real. Both existed. Neither canceled out the other. Strawberry understood it only in retrospect. His regret about not living like Carter taught him something crucial about what actually matters in life. Gooden carried Carter's example with him through his own struggles. When times got hard, he remembered how Carter had faced his own hardest moment. With grace, with faith, with that smile. Bench and Seaver and Verducci and Darling and Lasorda all pointed to the same essential truth. The kid was real. The optimism was genuine. The joy wasn't a mask covering pain. It was a separate force, a spiritual force, something that came from a place inside him that even cancer couldn't destroy. The body broke. The spirit never did. What makes a legacy endure? Is it the statistics, the records, the championships? Or is it something else? Something that exists beyond numbers on a page? The truth is that dozens of players have hit more home runs than Gary Carter. Dozens have won more games. Dozens have accumulated better batting averages. But when those players retired, the impact often retired with them. The influence faded. Years passed, new players came, new statistics were written. The old ones became historical curiosities. But Carter's impact didn't fade that way. Decades after his last game, his presence is still felt. His example is still invoked. His name still makes people want to smile. Why? Because he gave something to baseball that goes beyond statistics. He gave a model, he gave a standard, he gave proof that you could be excellent and also good, that you could compete at the highest levels and also maintain your integrity, that you could be tough and also kind, that you could play a violent sport without becoming violent as a person, that you could remain faithful to your beliefs even when your beliefs made you different from the people around you, that you could be modern and also moral. These lessons don't get old. They don't become obsolete. Each generation needs them. Each generation of young athletes needs to see an example of someone who made these choices and became greater for them, not lesser. The Roberto Clemente Award was given to Carter in 1989. The award goes to the player who best exemplifies the game of baseball, sportsmanship, community involvement, and the individual's contribution to his team. It's voted on by fans, media, and front office personnel. It's one of the highest honors in baseball because it acknowledges that baseball is about more than what happens on the field. It's about who you are when the field doesn't matter. Carter's foundation work represented years of quiet effort, years of caring about autism, about juvenile diabetes, about leukemia awareness, about children's well-being. These weren't photo opportunities. This wasn't charity designed for publicity. This was genuine care for people he would never meet. This was time and resources devoted to causes that mattered to him because they touched people he had known or causes that spoke to his values. The foundation continues to this day, long after his death. Work that he started is still being done. That's legacy. That's the kind of mark that makes a life matter beyond the sphere of your own existence. When we talk about the 1986 Mets, we talk about a team that overflowed with talent. Keith Hernandez, Keith's intellect, Strawberry's power, Gooden's arm, John Pridemore, Ray Knight, Wally Backman. The roster was loaded, but every single person involved with that team points to Carter as the difference. Not because he hit the most home runs or struck out the fewest batters, but because he created an environment where excellence could flourish. He created a culture where young players could be great without destroying themselves. He created a space where talent and character could coexist. This is invisible work. You can't measure it in statistics, but you can measure it in results. The Mets won the World Series that year. Every player on that roster attributes a piece of that success to Carter. Some explicitly, some implicitly, but everyone understands that the team was better because he was there. The smile he flashed in his final days was the ultimate victory. Not a victory over the cancer. The cancer took him. The disease won the physical battle, but a victory of the spirit. A sign that while the body may surrender, the spirit of the kid remains invincible. His legacy as a Hall of Famer on and off the field continues to serve as a beacon for current and future generations of athletes. It reminds them that the truest measure of a career is not the statistics. It's the character you maintain when the cameras are off and the pain is at its peak. Gary Carter understood that better than almost anyone who ever played the game. He lived it every single day. He proved it through 18 seasons of professional baseball. He demonstrated it when he could have chosen cynicism, but chose optimism instead. He showed it when he could have protected himself, but chose to be available instead. He lived it when he could have become jaded, but chose faith instead. The painful truth that was revealed when Gary Carter died was that everything people loved about him was real, entirely real, not a performance, not a calculated image, real. And that realization changed everyone who knew him. It gave them permission to be real too, to stop pretending that the game required them to be someone they weren't, to understand that excellence and integrity could coexist, that you could be great and also good, that you could win championships and also maintain your soul, that you could play baseball at the highest level and still be the kind of person you wanted to be when you looked in the mirror. That's the ultimate legacy of Gary Carter. Not the records, not the All-Star appearances, not the World Series ring. The ultimate legacy is the permission he gave to everyone around him to be authentically themselves while achieving at the highest levels. The kid gave everyone who knew him something precious. He gave them proof that it was possible. He proved that a life of integrity doesn't require sacrificing excellence, that faith doesn't make you weak, that family can be your strength, that service to others elevates you, that joy is worth fighting for, that authenticity is worth the price of being different. These truths never die. These truths speak to every generation. Every young athlete should understand something fundamental. Gary Carter showed you the way.